Salem Witch Trials. Massachusetts' biggest witch hunt. The Salem Witch Trials was a dark period in the history of the United States that marked the largest torture of people accused of witchcraft in 1692 in the village of Salem, now Danvers in Massachusetts. The suspects were unfairly tried in court with unreliable witnesses and unsubstantiated evidence. It is known that 144 to 185 women, children, and men were accused of being witches. 19 or 20 of them were hanged or burned alive. What was the real reason behind the Salem Witch Trials? Who were the victims and accusers? We will discuss this interesting case, but don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. The witch persecution that occurred in Salem was not the first time. Witch persecution has occurred since the 15th to 17th centuries. The Salem Witch Trials became widespread due to the involvement of clerics, court officials, local government, and influential people in Salem. The clergy were concerned that the number of churches was decreasing. Competition between wealthy families with close ties to Salem Harbor and farmland owners. Local and court officials who supported witchcraft accusations and implemented harsh laws and policies because colonial settlement was unsettled. Earlier in 1684, King Charles II of England had revoked the charter of the Bay Colony in Massachusetts. Some of the accusers were from influential families in Salem at the time. In 1689, the English kings William III and Mary II started a war with France in its American colonies. This war, known as King William's War, attacked areas in northern New York, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. Refugees were sent partly to Essex Country, half to Salem Village on Massachusetts Bay. King William's War brought many religions and Christian sects into Salem, such as the Quakers, making Salem Village a very religious area. In the medieval and early modern era, many religions, including Christianity, taught that the devil could give power to someone called a witch. Through demon-given magic, a witch would harm others in exchange for loyalty to the devil. Witchcraft was considered the second capital crime listed in the Massachusetts Bay Colony's criminal code. It was from these ideas of settler religion and Puritan beliefs that people understood the relationship between the natural world and the spirit world, including how the people of Salem viewed the Metacom Rebellion of 1689, the war between the Wabanaki, a Native American tribe, and with the French colonies showed signs of witchcraft. According to Puritan beliefs, all fights are the work of the devil. The Puritans have been in existence since 1630 in Massachusetts Bay and have had little influence, but there are still traces of it. The Puritans were a Protestant religious movement that existed in the 16th and 17th centuries. The movement was active in ridding the Church of England of unscriptural elements and restoring it to a pure and godly stream. Providence. One of the traces of the Puritan movement that they still believe in regarding all events that occur in everyday life according to God's will. The mysterious illness among the women of Salem that was inferred to be witchcraft was a sign that God was angry and it was all God's work. Those who escaped the patriarchal and hierarchical Puritan holiness would be accused of being witches. Especially women who defied the unfair patriarchal system, they would definitely be suspected. That is why most women were accused of being witches and executed. What's even stranger is that the main accusers are also girls and women in their 20s. Reverend Samuel Parris, who was first appointed minister of Salem Village in 1689, called a doctor to examine his 9-year-old daughter Betty Parris and her 11-year-old cousin Abigail Williams in January 1692. They were screaming, throwing things, speaking in strange languages and voices, and lying in unusual positions. Doctors soon concluded that the two were under the influence of witchcraft. Samuel, who had a reputation for being greedy and violent, soon gained the attention of residents who thought the domestic quarrels had angered God. Betty and Abigail accused Tituba, a female slave owned by Parris. Court proceedings were soon underway. Betty was quickly sent to her other family home to avoid the uproar. Because of the controversy that happened to Samuel's family, he was fired from his job. He and his family moved and settled in Sudbury, Massachusetts, in 1692. After a new charter for the Bay Colony was granted by King William III and Queen Mary II, at the suggestion of a Puritan minister named Increase Mather, a governor of the colony, William Phipps from Maine was appointed. After the new charter, the prisons in Salem were filled with people accused of being witches. Phipps immediately set up the Oyer Court on May 2007, 1692 to hear, and the Terminer Court to decide. These courts were established for Essex, Suffolk, and Middlesex counties. The establishment of this court was the beginning of the punishment of executing innocent people. Bridget Bishop was the first woman to be executed after the court was established. Bishop was an elderly woman who was promiscuous and had a habit of gossiping. When she was brought to court, she replied, "I am as clean as an unborn baby." Her arguments were not convincing, so on June 10th she was hanged on a hill that came to be called Gallows Hill. Cotton Mather, Increase Mather's father, wrote a letter requesting that the court should not accept spectral evidence such as visions and dreams that others could not witness. However, his suggestions were ignored. Unlike Betty, who did not appear in court, Abigail accused 57 people of witchcraft. In June 1692, she gave her final testimony, then she disappeared after the trial. While Betty married a shoemaker and had children after the incident, she died in 1760. On February 29, magistrates John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin, who were colonial officials trying to settle this local case, accused 3 girls including Tituba, Sarah Good, who is a beggar, and Sarah Osborne, who is a poor old woman. Tituba's confession would later trigger a witchcraft crisis in the development of the case. Starting on March 1, 1692, they were brought before the magistrate and interrogated for days. Osborne and Good pleaded not guilty. Meanwhile, Tituba claimed she was visited by the devil and ordered to serve him. She was asked to sign a book in the possession of a tall, white-haired man, but she refused to sign it and saw that some witches wanted to destroy the Puritans. Martha Corey was accused of being a witch, even though she was a dedicated member of the Salem Village Church. She said, if she could be a witch, then anyone could. Her words led to widespread accusations against women, men, and children. Corey's confession brought Sarah Good's 4-year-old daughter Dorothy to the judge. Her soft and innocent answers were taken as a confession. Since Thomas Danforth, the governor of the colony, and his assistant came to court in April, the examination has become more serious. Besides Betty and Abigail, Thomas Putnam's 12-year-old daughter Ann Carr Putnam was an active accuser. Thomas was known as the descendant of a prominent family in Salem who was close to Paris. Their children knew each other and often played together. Ann Carr has testified against 60 people. When her parents died in 1699, Ann Carr took care of her 7 younger siblings. In 1706, she joined the Salem Village Church. She apologized for accusing many people because she was influenced by the devil. 9 years after she joined the church, she died. Elizabeth Hubbard is another accuser. She was a 7-year-old orphan who worked as a maid in the home of her Aunt Rachel Griggs and her husband William Griggs. She attended the trial in a possessed state, claiming to have been tormented by the spirits of her accusers. Hubbard gave testimony against 29 people, 13 of whom were executed on Gallows Hill. As Hubbard did not come from an influential family, there is no further record of her after the trial. Mary Walcott, the 16-year-old daughter of Jonathan Walcott, captain of the Salem Village Militia. She was related to Ann Carr, who was married to her cousin Mary. Mary's house was next door to the Paris' house. In March 1692, he joined the main accusers. She claimed to have been harassed by the hands of those she accused and saw many terrifying visions. When the girls had convulsions in the courtroom, she just sat and knitted. Mary gave testimony that led to 16 people being executed, 1 died in prison, and another was blackmailed to death. The blackmailed victim was Giles Corey, Martha Corey's husband. At the time, Giles was 71 years old. He died in September 1692 because he was blackmailed by Stoneheavy for refusing to attend the trial. After the trial, Mary married a man named Isaac Farrar. Her wedding ceremony was blessed by Reverend Samuel Parris. Mary had 6 children. She died at the age of 77 in 1752. Mercy Lewis was the next accuser who had the same symptoms as Ann Carr because she worked as a maid in her home. Lewis was a 19-year-old girl who survived the bloody incident involving the native Wabanaki tribe in Casco Bay or Portland, Maine in 1689. The incident killed her parents. After being orphaned, she worked in the Putnam family home since 1692. Lewis accused 9 people of witchcraft and testified in 16 cases, including that of Reverend Jerosh Burroughs, a former Salem Village minister and former employer who had moved to Casco Bay. Mary Warren, an accuser with a similar background to Lewis. She was a 20-year-old girl who worked as a maid in the home of John and Elizabeth Proctor. Her employer was a critic who actively prosecuted and tortured witches, including Warren. The first time Warren showed symptoms of distress, John threatened to hit him, which made Warren recover instantly. During her trial in April 1692, she was accused of being a witch because the judges suspected that her previous symptoms were a lie. But the statement caused great distress to the girls in the courtroom, including Warren. In the end, she was no longer under suspicion. She then fought John, who had allied with the devil, and deceived her. Warren's fate is unknown after the trial. The Oyen court had executed 5 people in July and August and executed 8 people in September 1692. All the accused were hanged on the gallows hill because many people were executed without concrete evidence. On October 3, Increase Mather, who was then president at Harvard, denounced the spectral evidence used in the trial. Increase said, "Better that 10 suspected witches escape than one innocent person be punished." Increase's request, which had previously been made by his father, received a response from Phipps. Phipps' own wife was accused of being a witch because the court cleared the charges with spectral evidence. Phipps finally abolished the Court of Oyer and Terminer on October 29 and replaced it with the Court of Superior Judicature. The new court did not allow spectral evidence to be involved and convicted 3 of the 56 defendants. In May 1693, Phipps pardoned anyone imprisoned on charges of witchcraft. But the devastation had already been done. Many possibly innocent people were executed. Not only humans, but also animals were executed, including 2 dogs who were thought to have a connection with the devil. Judge Samuel Sewall, who was involved in the Ann Carr Putnam accusation case, publicly apologized and felt guilty. The Massachusetts General Court issued instructions to all communities to fast to reflect on the cruel tragedy in Salem on January 14, 1697. A court in 1702 declared the Salem Witch Trials of 1692 invalid. Then in 1711, the village of Salem passed a law restoring the rights and reputation of the accused victims. Their heirs were given £600 as compensation for the crime. In 1957, the Massachusetts government officially apologized for the tragedy in Salem in 1692. In 1953, in a drama called The Crucible by Arthur Miller, the tragedy of Salem was brought back to life. The drama uses the allegory of McCarthyism, anti-communism that was happening in the country with witch hunts. Meanwhile, historians and other scientists are looking for scientific causes for the strange behavior experienced by the accused girls. According to historian Carol Carslin, the accusers, who were orphans and poor, took advantage of the situation to distract the public from their difficult situation. There are also those who speculate that the strange behavior is due to contamination with ergot fungus, so that they experience ergotism. The symptoms are delusions, hallucinations, vomiting, and muscle spasms. Other causes may be mass hysteria or deliberate deception. Until now, the exact cause of the Salem Witch Trial is still debated. To memorialize the 300th anniversary of the event, the Salem Witch Trials Memorial Park was built by Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel in August 1992. To discuss and come to terms with the tragedy, an exhibition will be held at the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem in late 2021 and early 2022. The Salem Witch Museum, which presents the hysteria when the largest witch hunt took place in the 17th century, is the most visited attraction in the city of Salem.